Waiver wire winners heading into Week 15. Players are all rostered in under 60% of sleeper redraft leagues. In Michael Carter's return, Zonovan Knight still outtouched him 19-8. At least 19 touches and 15 fantasy points across the last 2 weeks, 69, 90, and 71 rushing yards the last 3 games he just scored in Week 14. Jahan Dotson scored 17-plus fantasy points in his first 2 games of the season. In his first 4 games before injury, he had 4 touchdowns. He missed some time due to injury, but in Week 13, he saw his highest snap percentage since returning from injury with 79%. He caught his 5th touchdown of the season. He had 5 receptions on 9 targets. This is a first-round investment by the Commanders, and I truly believe in this talent. Huge 39.2 fantasy point Week 14 for Evan Ingram. He caught 11 of 15 targets for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns directly after scoring 14 fantasy points in Week 13, catching 5 of 7 targets and scoring a touchdown there as well. Elijah Moore's snap percentage has climbed from 35 to 68 to 82% the last 3 weeks. He had 14 fantasy points in Week 12. He had 12 in Week 14. It's encouraging for him to see 10 targets this past week. He caught 6 of them for 60 yards. Corey Davis is in the concussion protocol. DJ Chark's snap percentage has also climbed the last 3 weeks. His fantasy points as well, 9.6 to 14.8 to 21.4 fantasy points. 98 and 94 receiving yards the last 2 games played. He's on fire right now. There's just the chance that Jameson Williams' role can continue to grow. Speaking of Jameson Williams, he might be a good stash. He just scored a 41-yard touchdown in his second NFL game. You may want to monitor the Patriots' backfield. Damian Harris didn't play in Week 13. Ramondre Stevenson got banged up a bit last night. This left Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris to take the load. They do have a top 5 matchup coming up against the Raiders. Harris outtouched Strong 8-7, but it's Strong who was involved in the passing game. The Colts wide receiver group has a great fantasy matchup this week against the Vikings, so maybe you want to take a shot on either Paris Campbell or Alec Pierce. We've seen 3 weeks over 18 fantasy points for Campbell. Pierce, on the other hand, has seen 8 targets in 2 out of 3 of his last games. 9, 4, 8, and 6 targets the last few games for Demarcus Robinson, operating as the Baltimore Ravens wide receiver 1. The one concern here is if Tyler Huntley doesn't go this week. Chris Moore caught 10 of his 11 targets for 124 receiving yards with Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins out of the mix. This is dependent on the status of Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins, though. 18.5 fantasy points this past week for Chigozium and Okonkwo. He's been a field-stretching tight end for Ryan Tannehill, making some big plays. 5 out of 8 of his last games have been over 40 receiving yards, 5, 5, and 6 targets the last 3 games. Then last, if you want to stash some running back handcuffs, here are some options that are rostered in under 50% of sleeper redraft leagues. I prefer Madison and Gus Edwards out of this mix. I kind of tiered them here, but take a look at who is actually available and what sort of bench spots you can utilize for handcuffs.